Who to you? I've been pretty busy lately. A certain game was finally released, and I have had no life outside of it for the past couple of days. It was a pretty good incentive to not watch this next batch of movies, because these movies were the product of World War II. Once Bambi was done, Disney was only allowed to make collections of shorts and stuff. So they did that. A lot of that. Pretty much immediately, I knew I wouldn't be doing some of them. There's The Reluctant Dragon, which is, I think, more of a behind-the-scenes, how animation is made type of thing, and Mr. Bug Goes to Town and Victory Through Air Power aren't on Disney+, and I can't find them anywhere else either, so screw me, I guess. Then there's Song of the South. I couldn't force myself to get through it. I accidentally left the captions on at the start, and the first thing I see, literally the first dialogue in the entire movie is these over-exaggerated captions. Like, no thank you. So, that leaves 6 movies left to cover from the 1940s. Saludos Amigos, The Three Caballeros, Make Mine Music, Fun and Fancy Free, Melody Time, and The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. Every single one is a collection of shorts. Just like Fantasia.
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
I wasn't looking forward to watching this, but I have to say, after all of my complaining, it was pretty much exactly what I expected. So basically one day, the Disney crew decided that they deserved a vacation, so they all went to South America and had a grand old time. But they needed to justify it somehow, so they decided to make a racist movie about it. Oh, sorry, racist collection of 4 shorts. You know, you gotta be specific here. Movies aren't allowed. This is wartime, and people during war aren't allowed entertainment, which is why you should probably enjoy your entertainment while you can. To be fair, this movie wasn't as racist as I thought it was gonna be. In my defense, I had a good reason to think that. It's a movie from the early 1940s titled Saludos Amigos. What the heck did you think was gonna happen? But yeah, not completely clean, and we'll talk more about that when we get to the gaucho part, but you know, that could take a while. Oh yeah, and we're ranking these again. Number 4. Hey look, we've arrived at the gaucho part. Guess it wasn't as long of a while as I thought. I hate this part, oh my god, it sucks. It sucks so much. We start off with a live-action segment in Buenos Aires that drags on for a really long time. Basically how this movie works is we have a part in live-action with a narrator explaining everything about what's happening on screen, which is always incredibly tedious. Then we get an animated part that deals with something somewhat like we previously saw. So for the live-action part for this short, we see a gaucho doing gaucho things and some dancers doing dancer things, and some barbecuers doing, oh god, barbecue things. And in the animated part, Goofy is a cowboy from the United States who somehow teleports to Argentina to become a gaucho, where the narrator dresses him up in some fashionable gaucho garb. Like, I'm just reading my script here, I don't remember any of this, but apparently it's worse than I thought. So then he messes around with his horse, or should I say his pingo, for the rest of the short, doing things that seemed gaucho-like to the animators. And, eventually they tie up an ostrich, who looks funny. I like him. I like the ostrich. Then Goofy's poncho gets set on fire, and he flies back to his prairie home for no reason. What's racist about it? It's not really directly racist, so that's nice, but there's like, it's a lot of shade. Lots of shade is being thrown on like South American customs. So like there's a part where Goofy is getting dressed in his gaucho clothes, and then the narrator goes, and then he wears the poncho, which just covers everything else anyway. I don't know, man, it's just annoying. Also, why is Goofy even here? The plain one, which we'll get to, had no classic Disney characters, and that one was fine. The best, in fact, which we'll get to. And Goofy doesn't even talk in this short, so why is he here? I honestly think there was one good part in this short, which was the part where he was like singing this beautiful song, and then it starts repeating, and there's just a record player next to him. It's funny, you don't expect it, you laugh a little, and you move on. The rest of this didn't even attempt to be funny. That's why I hate it. Moving on. Number 3. This is the last short in the thing, actually, and it's definitely the best we'll ever see from Joe. I hate Joe. He is the herald of Satan. Every time we see this freaking bird, everything completely goes wrong. For now, it's not too bad, though. It's still bad, just not too bad. And there isn't really a story here, and it's more about showing off the animation. If you remember, that's why I hated so much of Fantasia. This short is basically an artist painting a bunch of stuff to the tune of Aquarela de Brazil, or at least I assume that's what it is, given that that's the title of the short. Anyway, I like the backgrounds. The backgrounds are cool, and it's actually really impressive how they did make it seem like the landscapes were being, like, painted on, considering that this had never really been done before. And then Donald is brought into the mix, which is awesome, and then we meet Joe. Screw you, Joe. Screw you. Donald and Joe have an exchange, and then Joe leads Donald to the land of the Samba. So Joe gives Donald a drink that's probably just mushrooms in liquid form, and I say this because Donald immediately gets high. Now he's possessed with the spirit of the Samba, and he dances all night. And then the movie just ends. It's creative, sure, but it's not the best. But do you know what is the best? Not the next one, obviously, but the one after that. So let's move on to the one before the one after that, also known as the next one. So that way we can move on to the one after that sooner rather than later, because it's important not to be later to after, you know? Yeah, you know what I mean. Number 2. This one is the first short, and it's basically Donald exploring the environment around Lake Titicaca, haha, while talking to the narrator a bunch. He has lots of interactions with the natives, whose designs are not nearly as bad as they could be. This series of events all happens so that Donald can be paired up with the llama, who I love very much, even if he looks like he's from Whoville. The climax of this short is on a suspension bridge. Suspension bridge scenes were funny 79 years ago, they're still funny now, and they'll probably still be funny 79 years in the future. The narrator is actually funny in this short, unlike in the live-action parts, where he's boring. And I don't really have anything else to say about this short. It's got a mostly good story, it's got mostly good characters, and it's got mostly no racism. But what if we took all of that, but got rid of the mostly? Mostly got rid of the mostly. That's right. It's time for the one after that, which is now the next one rather than the one after that, which really proves how important it is to be soon to after instead of showing up after the after has already happened, which is not good. Can you tell I'm trying to draw this out? It's working. Half of this number 2 segment has been me rambling about nonsense, and I'm still rambling about nonsense, and I could continue rambling about nonsense. Okay, on to number 1. Number 1. The plain story is everything I want from an animated short. It's just the right length so it doesn't overstay its welcome. All of the characters are good. There's actual humor, and there's basically no racism. Is this even possible? Yes. This is the story of a family of plains. There's the macho dad plane, the sweet and feminine mom plane, and Pedro, who's got an epic hat and an epic scarf. Pedro goes to plane school, where he learns things like plane anatomy and skylighting. Everything is going great until the dad comes down with a serious case of plane fever or something, and he can't go get the mail, and the mom can't do it because she's a woman. Because she has high oil pressure. So Pedro has to. And by the way, this concept is pretty creative. So he goes to collect the mail and everything is going great until he sees a mountain with a scary face that always lightnings and thunders. But he flies past and collects the mail. Everything's going great. Wait, are you sensing a theme here? Until Pedro meets a vulture and starts chasing it. But now, Pedro is face to face with the scary mountain. Then, he gets beat up by the storm, which is apparently sentient. So, the narrator suggests that Pedro flies above the storm, which he does, but now he's out of gas and falls back down. Meanwhile, back at the plane hangar, the parent planes are mourning their dead son when Pedro makes it back with the mail. Good job, Pedro. There's one line towards the end where everyone thinks Pedro is dead, and somebody says, "Another murder to the mail service." It's just fantastic, and it kind of sums up this short. In fact, it kind of sums up this movie. It may only be 42 minutes, but its randomness made it feel a lot longer. With that being said, this movie goes below Pinocchio and above Bambi. Pinocchio's story is more connected and enjoyable, even if it makes no sense. And Bambi still is and always will be a drag to get through, even if it's mostly racism-free. I personally would like to say a formal goodbye to Joe the Parrot. It's too bad we'll never see him again. Oh, what's that? He's in the very next movie? Huh. You know what? I changed my mind. I don't want to see him again. The Three Caballeros. Why am I even talking about this right now? It's not worth it, this movie. Oh my god. I hate this movie with every bone, every cell, every molecule, every atom, every proton, every quark, every whatever smaller than a quark in my body. I don't even know what a quark is, which should tell you something. Can you tell where I'm gonna put this in the ranking? Can ya? The most insulting part about this is that it starts out perfectly inoffensive, and then it takes the most egregious, 2-point vocab word, nosedive, straight into just, I don't even know, it's just so bad. Let me show you what I mean. Oh yeah, and these won't be in ranked order, because that kind of defeats the whole purpose. So, it starts with Donald existing in this limbo land, where the entire movie takes place, and he's standing next to this big present, because his birthday is Friday the 13th. That is not bad. If the rest of the movie was like that, I would not say any of the things that I'm about to say. So, he opens the present, and there's a bunch of smaller presents inside it. Inside one of the smaller presents is this film reel, and the first part of the movie is basically Donald watching the film reel. And the film reel is not bad. I kind of like the film reel. We get this narrator at the start who's actually fun to listen to. He talks to Donald a bunch, and his voice doesn't sound like 10 million of the most jagged and greasy fingernails in the world, dragged along the world's crustiest chalkboard. I don't even know what the hell I'm trying to say, but that's just how Professor Holloway, the second narrator, makes me feel. Why did we get rid of the good narrator? Was your budget too high and you had to stick with the knockoff Muppet one? Anyway, the movie starts off with the cold-blooded penguin. According to Wikipedia, that's what it's called. Anyway, we meet our main character, a penguin named Pablo. Pablo. A penguin named Pablo. That sounds so familiar. Where have I heard that before? You know what? Dark science, cloning, secrets only the Sith knew. I guess it doesn't really matter. Anyway, Pablo is determined to leave his home, but he keeps on freezing to death, and his friends have to keep dying him out. So he decides to take a boat. Only he doesn't have a boat. So he makes a boat out of ice, because that's all he had. And he just floats north, thousands of miles all the way to South America. Then he, for some reason, changes direction and floats thousands of more miles west, out to the Galapagos Island. But if you recall, his boat is made out of ice, and the whole point is to get somewhere hot. And quick science lesson, that means the boat melts. This results in the most tense and dramatic scene in the history of cinema, where Pablo desperately tries to survive in the midst of a Titanic-level disaster. Luckily, Pablo barely makes it out alive, and lives a happy life, slowly melting into a black and white puddle on a tropical island. This is a good short. It's cute, it has a good story, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. Enjoy it, because it's about to get so much worse. Well, not quite yet, because first we get the next part of the movie reel, which is a rainforest scene where we meet a bunch of interesting birds. There are two notable birds here. First is the bup-bup-bup bird, who shows up many times and is almost as cool as the hoo-hoo owl. But not quite. The second is the herd of flamingos, with dead and empty eyes. I am not kidding. Look at these flamingos. Then we hear a story from a gaucho. Yes, a gaucho. Based on last time, we can conclude that this will not end well. So, this is a story about the gaucho when he was a kid, and where he decides to go hunting for condor birds all by himself. He meets a donkey with wings, not a Pegasus, donkey-sis? The gaucho decides the best thing to do is kidnap the donkey-sis and force him to compete in a race for profit. On the day of the fiesta, the gaucho and the donkey-sis line up, and they win, but they get caught, and they fly away, never to be seen again. This gaucho short isn't as bad as the other one, and I like the narrator in this one. The story changes depending on what the narrator thinks is correct, and he can communicate directly with his past self. That's cool, I like it. But then we meet Joe, and the movie instantly and irrevocably plummets in both quality and budget. Yes, I just used the word irrevocably. I don't even know what it means. I had to look it up, but it sounds appropriate. Remember earlier whenever I said that Joe was the herald of Satan, and you all probably thought, oh, come on, I'm sure that's just an exaggeration. No. Joe brings us Bahia. Let me just explain the plot of Bahia. You will understand. Donald opens another one of his presents. Joe is just in the present, and then he sings a magnificent song about the town of Bahia. He explains how beautiful it is there, and how many sexy women there are. No, I'm not kidding. That is an actual thing that Joe goes out of his way to mention. The animation during this scene, at the start, is good. Especially the palm trees. Look at them. Then, Joe clones himself a bunch of times, and sings a song about how he's gonna take Donald to Bahia, only to realize that he himself has never been to Bahia. So, they get on a train inside the present, and they go through this really cool-looking chalk landscape. It's the last cool thing in the movie. In Bahia, we meet Yaya, one of the previously mentioned sexy women, who is also live action. This is, without a doubt, the worst aspect of this movie. Not the Bahia part, the live action. It gets even worse. The animators tried so hard to integrate these cartoon birds into live action sequences, and it failed so badly. Every time live action people are on screen, the animation gets so blurry that it's almost funny, but in a bad way, not a good way. But it gets even worse. Yaya gives Donald a cookie, which somehow gives him some sort of telepathic orgasm? He floats up into the air with, this look on his face. How do you interpret this? So then Donald and Joe proceed to flirt with Yaya for the rest of the scene, with a bunch more live-action guys showing up too, and it's all just a disaster. I'm really questioning what's so great about Bahia. Can someone please tell me? Eventually, it turns into this float battle between Donald, Joe, and literally every other guy in this town. What happened to all the other sexy women? I thought this town was supposed to be full of sexy women. Where did they all run off to? Then Yaya gives Donald a big kiss, and he has another one of his moments. His heartbeat becomes the beat for another song that takes place inside his brain, which may or may not just be Donald's Yaya fan fiction? I don't even know what's happening at this point. So then Joe and Donald leave Bahia and return to Limboland, and Donald comments on, oh my god, Bahia was so amazing, and there were so many sexy women, even though there was literally just one sexy woman, or even just one woman in general. So then Donald wants to open more presents, but he can't because he shrunk down to present size so he could hang out with all the sexy women in Bahia. But Joe tells Donald, don't worry, and that he can use black magic to grow to normal size. To nobody's surprise, it goes horribly wrong, and Donald explodes into a bunch of white goo. Just kidding, although it would have been pretty nice. It did look pretty painful though, but Joe just sat there laughing while his friend was in horrible and unimaginable amounts of pain. And I will never recover from the horrible and unimaginable amounts of pain induced on me by this next part, which also happens to be the last part, which also happens to be the worst thing I have ever seen, and I have recently enlightened myself with the knowledge of the great cannibalism theory from Twitter. Just look it up. It starts off with a weird part that's very abstract and reminds me very much of the soundtrack part from Fantasia. If you recall, that's the part I refused to talk about, so the fact that we're starting off with this really shows how low this is about to sink. We then meet Panchito, the rooster cowboy mafia man. And by the way, someone compared me to this rooster the other day. What the hell was that about? I was not aware of ever having worn a cowboy hat, or pistols, or an outlandishly large yellow beak, but I digress. So then the Three Caballeros have a jolly good song, where they announce to the world that they are indeed the Three Caballeros. During this song, they all whistle at a girl's butt, even though it was literally just the silhouette of a girl. Must have been very impressive. Panchito gives Donald a piñata, and then we somehow get roped into the telling of a Mexican Christmas story with a bunch of these horrifying looking children. So then Donald tries to bust open the piñata, except he's blindfolded, so we all know how that's gonna go. And of course, he ends up beating the crap out of himself because Joe and Panchito keep moving the piñata away from him like the sick and sadistic birds they are. But then the piñata cracks open, and all of this stuff inside the piñata comes to life and performs a dance number, just because it wastes time. So then, Panchito tells the story of the Aztecs, and how their capital city eventually became Mexico City, carefully moving around the fact that Mexico City was actually built on top of the rubble. This leads us to another sequence of painted drawings depicting Mexico, I guess. And then they fly on their magic carpets, magic sarapes, into the real world. Yes, they fly around Mexico, real Mexico, and it looks as bad or worse as you think. None of these are worth mentioning, except for the one on the beach. So, in one scene, the birds start staring at a bunch of sexy women in bikinis because they were, and I quote, sweet little bathing beauties. Again, I don't remember this. I must have just blocked it from my memory, but it was in my script. So, apparently Donald plays a bunch of beach games with the sexy women, and then it just becomes this stupid sexual fantasy abstract crap again. And it continues like this for the rest of the freaking movie. At this point, it's just so hilariously sexist and just completely stupid that you would be forgiven for thinking that this was all satire. But no! These animators poured months of their lives into drawing these things, and I cannot for the life of me understand how any of this even happened. I feel like they just put whatever came to mind straight onto paper. You're telling me that movies like Dumbo aren't allowed to be made because we have to focus on the war, and yet this is okay? Maybe this movie was made to get the Nazis to surrender. I'm shocked it didn't work, except it actually might have, because Hitler surrendered 3 months after this movie came out. What the hell? This movie goes straight to the bottom. Below the bottom, literal Fantasia is miles better than this. Fantasia knew that what they were writing was complete and utter garbage, but at least they had the balls to actually animate it. With this movie, they barely even did that. They might not have been as racist as I thought, but that's just because they were too busy showing off their basement full of sexy women to also insult everyone in South America as well. I have said the phrase sexy women 10 times. Now 11. I know, because I counted. You've probably seen the counter on the screen. Do you see the problem yet? In conclusion, I now identify as duck gender. I feel both sexual and romantic attraction towards birds, especially ones with fancy, colorful suits. You see what this movie has done to me? It's caused me to resort to coming up with fake sexualities like 15-year-old girls on TikTok. I repeat, this movie has turned me into a 15-year-old girl from TikTok. Are you happy now? The next movie was released on Hitler's birthday, not even 1 year after the end of World War II. And yet, it was not nearly as bad. Interesting fact, Make Mine Music is the only movie in the official Disney animated canon that is not on Disney+. This, of course, is absolutely ridiculous for a number of reasons. First, you just heard me rant for a very long time about the Three Caballeros, which can be seen in all its glory. 2, this movie's good. Why is it not on Disney+? Like, I don't understand. I feel like they saved all the good shorts for this one. I actually like this one. Luckily, if you search up Make Mine Music on YouTube, you will find a playlist by an unnamed individual that holds clips of all of the movie's shorts. So, let's go through them, shall we? Ranked, of course. Number 10, Without You. It's unclear what's even happening here. I'm guessing that someone is without someone, cause without you, but even that's kind of a reach. We see some scenery of stuff. Not sure how it's relevant, or even if it's relevant, but it's certainly stuff. I think. Yeah, the good ones don't come until later. Number 9, Blue Bayou. Same issue as the last one, nothing really happens. We get some shots of nighttime, some shots of the forest, some shots of a heron or a stork or whatever, doing whatever herons or storks or whatever's do. It all looks nice, and it's not overly long, so it's honestly just there. Number 8, 2 Silhouettes. There's not really anything to say about this. In case you couldn't tell, it's just silhouettes. Watch the end credits of Candace Against the Universe. You'll get more value and more emotion. Not to mention, you won't have to see the cherubs, which are still front and center in my mind after Fantasia. Not even the Three Caballeros could get rid of those cherubs. That's how serious it is. Number 7, After You've Gone. This one is just some instruments dancing and boxing and swimming and doing a bunch of other stuff set to some jazzy jazz. Even though it's still abstract, obviously, it's instruments dancing, it's not boring because something very obvious is happening. They're instruments and they're doing stuff. Watch the Without You short and present me with a cohesive story, or even just a cohesive concept. See? You can't, and that's why this short is so good. Number 6, Peter and the Wolf. I think this might get me disowned from my family. I didn't love this one. It's just long. That's all it comes down to. It's long. But there are some positives. I like how every character has a corresponding instrument, even if half of them are all basically the same thing. Don't at me, musicians. The music itself is good, and the plot is certainly a plot. Peter, who looks shockingly like 5-year-old me, wants to go out into the meadow, but his grandpa won't let him because there are dangerous wolves out there. So Peter does what any sensible kid would do, and certainly what 5-year-old me would do. He stole his grandfather's gun and went out to hunt the wolf. On the way, he meets a bird, a duck, and a cat. They're all okay. What's more than okay, however, is the perfect design for the wolf. It's so good. The whole sequence of him chasing them is really fun to watch, even if it resulted in the tragic passing of the duck. And I would like to point out, she is dead, okay? We'll come back to that. The rest of them hide on a tree branch, and the wolf eventually gets caught. We meet some hunters who don't really do anything. Peter takes the wolf to the zoo, and everyone starts clapping. And then we see the duck at the end, even though it was made very clear that she had died a horrible and gruesome death. It's all just whatever. I have no real opinion on this. Number 5. All the cats join in. I'm not very sure what exactly this is about, and yet I somehow related to it? I don't know. It's basically a girl trying to answer the phone before her sister, because it's a cute boy. Relatable, as I am always being called by girls due to my irresistible charm and good looks. Then all the neighborhood kids get abducted and go to an ice cream store that's also somehow a sandwich store, and they go dance, because that's apparently something that frequently happens. Honestly, I like it. The music is good, the animation style works, and it's overall just a good time. Number 4. Johnny Fedora and Alice Bluebonnet. I would say this was weird, but I've been exposed to so much weirdness lately that I truly do not know. So, this is the story of a sentient fedora, and a sentient bluebonnet doing what sentient clothing typically does. Absolutely nothing. They're next to each other at the hat store, and they fall in love, just as you would expect. But then, they get purchased by separate owners, and they're absolutely heartbroken. Well, the fedora is. The bluebonnet looks like she couldn't care less, and continues to look like this throughout the whole short. So, now the fedora needs to find the bluebonnet, but apparently everybody in this town wears hats, which just adds an extra layer of difficulty. Eventually, the fedora finds her, but something happens, and he ends up in the hands of some sort of drug lord, because soon enough, this guy's got himself into a gunfight at a bar with some other guy, and now there's a whole brawl going on in the bar, then the police arrive. It's all just kind of confusing. Then the fedora runs away or something, or like hops away, I don't know, and spends what seems like months looking for his beautiful hat bride, but it's no use. Just when he gives up, he's found by a man who turns him into a donkey hat, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a hat for donkeys. Apparently the bluebonnet has also become a donkey hat, and they live donkily ever after. Certainly creative, and I was always wondering what would come next. Maybe not a good thing, I don't know. That's probably, yeah, the story just made no sense. We're not going to talk about that. Number 3, Casey at the Bat. All of the baseball people are fun to watch, but that's not what you came here for. You want me to talk about Casey. I thought I knew what love was, but that was before I met Casey. Casey is an absolute giga-chad. All the ladies love him, and who can blame them? Just look at him. He is the absolute definition of what humanity could and should be. His chest, his legs, his chin, his... Wait, what were we talking about again? I'm not even entirely sure what this story was about because I was too busy obsessing over the gorgeous specimen that is Casey. Remember during the Dumbo part where we met Casey Jr. and I asked what happened to Casey Sr.? Well, I found him. And I have to say that I am very, very pleased. Number 2. Martin and the Coys. Guys, this one is just so fun to watch. The whole idea is that there are two factions of, like, mountain hobos on, like, nearby hills, and a war breaks out between them because one of them stole the other's eggs, and then they all die, and their ghosts fly up, and they watch the rest of the story play out from heaven. One man has survived from one faction, and one woman has survived from the other, and they instantly fall for each other because that's just how it works. So, the man and the woman live a happy life together, which inevitably means divorce. And they then continue the feud, and everything basically just goes in circles. It's a fun story, I like the hobos, I just like their design. Good show. The next one is clearly better, because that's how rankings work. Number 1. The Whale Who Wanted to Sing at the Met. It's here, ladies and gentlemen. The one you've all been waiting for. I don't know how anything other than this, besides maybe Casey, could be first. Just look at the whale. Look at the mustache, the hat. Just look. The plot makes a surprisingly large amount of sense, too, given what it is. So it starts with a bunch of newspaper articles declaring, hey, there's a singing whale. And then a bunch of people start singing about, hey, there's a singing whale. That's cool. So Willie goes to the opera so he can be discovered, and everyone loves him. He becomes a world phenomenon, he stars in movies, plays Satan in some sort of play. Everything is great, except for when it isn't. And then Willie is harpooned, making this the most tragic death in all of cinema. Like, this is Dobby Tony Stark level here. This is it. This is sad. And we are lucky to be blessed with the sound of his sweet voice ringing down from heaven. As a whole, how is this movie? Actually, it's really good. Some of the shorts are really amazing, some of them are fairly amazing, and only a few are what I would consider not amazing. And those not amazing ones don't even last for too long, so it's all around pretty amazing. It's for these amazing reasons that I'm putting this movie in second place, below Dumbo and above Snow White. Pretty impressive how we've gone from the worst movies so far to one of the best, but I guarantee the next one's gonna go right back down to the middle. Right back down to the middle. That's not as climactic as I thought it was gonna be. It would be like down to the bottom, but this next movie's not too bad. It's down to the middle. Whatever, let's move on. Fun and Fancy-Free is a sad case. It would be pretty good if it wasn't for the bad stuff. And I know that can usually be said for most things, but you'll see what I mean by the time we're done. So, this one has two shorts in it. The first one sucks, and the second one's good. But before we do either of those, we have to deal with Jiminy Cricket screwing around because he's back now. So I'm just gonna give the briefest rundown to save your soul and my soul. Jiminy is singing a bad song, then he's in a house, then he sees a conspiracy-filled newspaper that's basically just Fox News on a newspaper, and then he talks to a doll that will haunt my dreams, and then he finds the story of Bongo. And, you guessed it, the first short is Bongo. The story of Bongo, narrated by an incredibly annoying woman. So basically, Bongo is a circus bear, and apparently he's also, like, the strongest creature on Earth and the peak of evolution. Like, what is the stuff he's doing? His design is fine, but sometimes his eyes are blue, and sometimes they're brown. And every time I see when his eyes are blue, it just creeps me out, because bears don't have blue eyes, and it's just the most horrifying thing ever. Just make up your mind. Anyway, Bongo is just a slave, a circus slave, and he keeps having hallucinations about being free, so eventually he becomes a savage and breaks out of a moving train to live a happy life in the woods. But as soon as he enters the woods, he has literally no clue how to do anything. Even jump. He literally struggles to jump over a tree root. Like, I get you didn't live in the forest before, but you were literally like an MMA champion. Why is jumping so difficult for you? And another thing, why is he so amazed by literally everything around him? He was part of a traveling circus. He was exposed to dozens of cities, and that is certainly more than any normal person would be to. And it's not like he was locked in solitary confinement for his whole life. He could see through the bars on, like, his train cage. So why is it so surprising that trees are green? And the water. Don't get me started on the water. You need water to survive, yes? And then he touches water, and he's like, oh my god, it's wet. I never knew water was wet. Like, are you just dumb? You have short-term memory loss? Is he Dory? Is that what this is? Doesn't matter. He's living in bliss until the night comes, and a bunch of bugs are annoying him and can't sleep, which is fair. I would be annoyed too, except the bugs look so awesome. So, yeah. And then a sentient lightning storm sets out on a mission to kill him. And then he almost falls off a cliff and dies a horrible death, several times actually, leading him to the conclusion that the forest sucks and he had no clue why he even did this in the first place. Which is a good question. Why did he do this in the first place? Then Bongo tries to catch a fish because he's starving to death, but it obviously doesn't work because he basically thinks it'll just submit to being eaten. It seems unimportant, but this fish is single-handedly responsible for leading him to the sexy girl bear. And you see, you can tell she's supposed to be sexy because she has a flower on her head, you see? And they immediately fall in love for the same reasons why all of these animated romances have been happening. The man thinks the woman is hot, and the woman has no other options. So then we get a dream sequence that is, like most dream sequences that we've been seeing, a wet dream, and not really anything more. But this dream also involves bear cherubs. Everything is going great, but then we meet the terrorist bear. It's never explicitly stated that this bear is a terrorist, or even if bears can be terrorists, which I'm sure they can, but like, just look at him. He's a terrorist. Anyway, terrorist bear gets jealous of Bongo because he wanted to date the sexy girl bear. So they get into a fight, but it was all for nothing because the sexy bear chooses terrorist bear because she accidentally slapped him. And this slapping thing is the most interesting part of this, just for all the wrong reasons. I am completely convinced that this only made it in because the animators really wanted just a long and elaborate "that's what she said" joke, if those even existed or were called that back then. Because that's all this is, a bunch of bears stating over and over again how important slapping is in a relationship. Not convinced? Literally the next thing after Sexy Bear leaves Bongo, the bears sing this song about slapping, and like the lyrics are basically along the lines of "give her your cheek, give it a slap." I can't go into more detail because Susan will like destroy my channel, but like this is not by accident. It cannot be by accident. Watch it and form your own opinion if you want, but I warn you, you will be scarred for life. And then for the rest of it, basically nothing happens. The bears have a square dance, Bongo and Terrorist Bear get into another fight that results in the likely death of Terrorist Bear, so Bongo beats the hell out of Sexy Bear to show his love for her, and it ends. And it's just strayed so completely from where it started, and I don't feel like talking about this anymore. On to the good one. Mickey and the Beanstalk. Oh my goodness, it is a cornerstone of my childhood and probably everyone else's childhood, with one exception. I grew up with the better version, the one with Professor Von Drake and Hermit narrating, instead of the single dad talking to his puppets because he's sad and friendless. And since that one was made like later on because they realized that the puppets were like horrifying, it had like references to movies that originally like haven't been made yet, so like Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty, and that version is on YouTube, so I like make my music, I just watch it there. And it was as great as I remembered. The story is great, the characters are great, the memes are great. We got 2 memes from this movie, Mickey cutting the bread and Donald killing the cow. And then there's Willie, who is absolutely the best part, other than the music, which is so good. Even if you don't like this short, which is impossible, watch it anyway, just for the music, or just look up like the playlist online. I'm sure it's somewhere. And I really don't have that much to say about this, because pretty much all I do here is rant exclusively about the stuff that sucks, but this short, apart from the puppets, is, like, literally perfect, so just go watch it. It's on YouTube. Do it now. If this movie was just like the Beanstalk short, it would easily go to the top, but it isn't just this short, so I'm putting it below Snow White and above Pinocchio. Snow White and Pinocchio have been together since the beginning, but it's time to move on towards a new era. The next movie is Melody Time? Wait, can I get a refund? I don't want this era. No? Well, so it's been like a month or something since that last part, and I have had an epiphany. Going through the entire plot every single time takes a freaking huge amount of time that I don't have and you don't have, so I will try not to do that in an effort to get somewhere close to my original goal. So, let's do this, rapid fire. We have entered the realm of shorts that nobody knows or cares about. And Donald is here. Last time Donald was here, things did not go well at all. We are ranking these, but understand that none of these are, like, good. I mean, the movie opens with, like, these mask things, so I don't know what else you would expect. Number 7, Blame It on the Samba. They're back. They're back. They're back. Joe, Donald, Panchito, Caballeros. They're back. It's happening again. The live action is back, too. I thought I left all this behind me. Panchito looks different. Is it even Panchito? I don't really care. It changes nothing. Last. Dead last. Number 6, trees. It's so boring. It's literally a bunch of pictures of nature. I hate nature, and therefore I hate this. Moving on. Number 5, Pecos Bill. Oh, thank goodness, another cowboy story. Ever since the Goofy story, I've been dying to see more. But this time it's even better, because it's got live action too. Let me just explain the characters to you, and you will see exactly how strange this is. There's Pecos Bill, who was raised by ocelots. There's a horse named Widowmaker, because he likes to kill people. He and Widowmaker go around and do cowboy things, such as make rivers. And there's a woman cowboy, whose implants are so massive that she gets sent into low Earth orbit. Huh? Number 4, Once Upon a Winter Time. This story takes a long time to wrap up. The whole premise is a boy and a girl. Oh, winter animation. And the boy likes her, obviously, because all boys simultaneously have crushes on all girls at once. And it's really stupid, because the boy, like, gets some snow on her dress or something, and now she hates him forever. And then, like, stuff happens, and then they fall in love anyway. And that's it. And it's so long, and I don't like it. Number 3, Little Toot. This is a baby boat who is a terrorist. He crashes a boat into, like, a city, which kills, like, thousands of people. So, he gets exiled, and then he gets attacked by another sentient storm. How are there so many of these? This is, like, the 3rd or 4th one now. And then he's redeemed. Hooray, I don't care. You know, the biggest problem with this one is just, like, the pacing again. I mean, hey, if 90% of The Rise of Skywalker was just the characters screwing around, and then all of the major stuff happened in the last 10 minutes, that wouldn't be a very good movie, would it? Wait a minute. Number 2, The Legend of Johnny Appleseed. We have migrated from the bad shorts to the not bad shorts, but still not good, because I already said they would be not good, and I can't go back on my promise shorts. In case you have short-term memory loss, there are only 2 left. Firstly, the animation. The backgrounds are good, Johnny has a good design, his eye color is brown, but they're brown. And then we see him as an older guy, and his eyes are blue. And then we see him when he's really old, and his eyes change back, and now they're brown again. Didn't this happen with Bongo, too? And this isn't the only eye-related issue, either. I'm guessing the animators just gave up on their jobs at some point, because, like, 3/4 of the people just have dots for eyes. And, what else? The songs are good. The story is basically just the story of Johnny Appleseed. One day, Johnny's guardian angel, who I know I've seen somewhere before, shows Johnny, yo, apples are awesome. So Johnny sets out to plant apple trees over the entire tri-state area. And then his apple orchards become towns, and then he dies. Something ghost plants apple trees in heaven, because tree planting is his life now, and that's why clouds are apple trees. The end. It's paced better than the Tugboat one, and it actually has a structure to the plot, which is kind of unheard of. But the next one, oh ho, still not good, because again, I already said they wouldn't be, but very, very almost good. Number 1, Bumble Boogie. You like jazz? Well, it's a bee, and he's jazz. He's awesome. He's dancing with, like, instruments, and they're abstract, and it's abstract in a good way, because there's a story or something, and it's to the tune of Flight of the Bumblebee, which is good, but it's jazzy, and that makes it sound gooder. And the song makes me happy, because when I was in, like, 7th grade or something, I told everyone at my school that I composed that song and used a fake name, and I was, like, the coolest kid for, like, 2 days until people grew some common sense. Anyway, yeah. Some of these shorts are not, like, horrible, which I know I've said, like, 60 times, but that does not mean I ever want to watch this again, and I'm not going to, so it goes below Pinocchio and above Saludos Amigos. And there's actually one of these movies left, and I'm actually not dreading it, but at the time I'm saying this, I actually haven't watched it yet, so I'd better not regret saying it. Maybe I edit all this out later, and I'm just talking to myself. Okay, whatever. Roll the clip. Roll it. This is where we roll here. Like, okay, here we go.
It is Wednesday, my dudes.
So, we've got one more movie to watch, and then there are no more collections of shorts from Disney until the 70s. Unless I've been lied to, which I probably have. This one only has 2 shorts. The first one is based off of The Wind in the Willows, and the second one is based off of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I didn't think that either of those were particularly interesting, but I was wrong, because this movie is unironically one of the greatest movies of all time, until I get to the Book of Life later on, at which point I'll remember how good that one is, and then it will go up to the top. Let's begin. The first one was Wind in the Willows, and if you have no idea what the story was about, like I did, you would probably expect something really boring, probably with a bunch of ladies in dresses and big hats, sitting around a picnic table drinking tea. No? That was just me? Well, I can confirm that the story is definitely not that. First of all, the story only contains a few actual human beings. There's the postman, who only shows up for 5 seconds, the judge at the trial, and the prosecuting attorney. Is that the correct term? Doesn't matter. The point is, everybody else is an animal, unless I'm forgetting some people. So there's like, oh yeah, the policeman and the bartender guy, but you get it, there's a lot of animals. And that already makes things a lot better, because animals are significantly better than humans. So there are 4 main protagonists here. First, there's Rat and Mole, who are basically just there while things unfold around them. They also show up for a cameo in that version of A Christmas Carol with Scrooge McDuck, so that's all I could see the whole time. And I appreciate how the rat barely looks like a rat because A, he's standing on 2 legs, and B, he's got that ginormous mustache. Neither of those are bad things, he just doesn't look like a rat. Then there's Mole, who definitely looks like a mole. He's basically the dumb one, the sidekick, one might say. And then there's Toad. Toad's design is by far the best in its whole movie, besides maybe Ichabod's. Just look at him for 2 seconds and you can already tell exactly how sociopathic this amphibian truly is. Anyway, Toad is rich, or at least he was, before he blew all of his money on random crap. You see, Toad has manias, and that's basically where he discovers something new and then is completely obsessed with it for X amount of time. In the case of the story, it's motor cars, and that's the thing that sets the whole story in motion, basically. And then there's Angus McBadger, whose name I definitely did not look up. Why would you suggest something like that? And he comes along on the journey too, and he's the one who's responsible for all of Toad's money, which you might guess would be a stressful job. That's part of the reason why his design works so well. He looks like a crotchety old man who's sick of the world because, well, he kinda is. And while we're talking about animation, all of the backgrounds in both of these shorts are really good. At some points, they actually do kind of look like paintings, which is good. And there are also a bunch of antagonists, more than you would expect actually, but I think that would make more sense to talk about when we get to the plot. Well, would you look at that, we've arrived at the plot section, and I know I said I wasn't doing this anymore, but guess what? I frickin' lied. Deal with it. I looked it up, this plot is actually shockingly similar to the actual book, The Wind in the Willows, and I would not expect that, because this plot is actually not boring. And if you remember, that's basically the opposite of what I expected this to be. This short is half an hour long, but it felt like a lot longer, but not because it was boring this time, because there was like so much things. And the things were, like, interesting things. This is uncharted territory, guys. And it changes genres so many times, I don't even know. So let me just explain it to you as briefly as I possibly can. Toad has blown all of his money on his various manias, and he has now developed a mania for motor cars. To prevent him from going bankrupt, Rat and Mole lock Toad in his bedroom until the mania goes away. But then Toad sneaks out, and soon enough Toad is arrested for Grand Theft Auto. Switch genres. We cut to the court scene, laid out in that murder mystery way, where the witness is describing it, and then we go to a flashback. Toad's horse explains how Toad did not steal the car, instead he traded it for his entire house. But when the bartender comes to the stand, he claims that Toad did steal the car, and so he's sent to jail. Change genres. But then he escapes jail, disguised as an old lady, which leads to a dramatic chase scene where a dozen policemen try their best to shoot and kill an escaped car thief. Eventually, Toad finds refuge at Rat and Mole's house, where Angus McBadger reveals that the bartender who claimed that Toad stole the car is actually the leader of the group that Toad stole the house to, meaning that Toad was actually innocent all along. Switch genres! The climax of the story is everyone breaking into Toad's house and stealing the deed from the bartender to prove Toad's innocence. Eventually they do, and they think everything's all good, but switch genres, he develops a mania with planes, and the whole thing starts all over again. Yeah, that's the brief explanation, which really proves how much plot there really is here. And all the different plot elements are actually spread out somewhat evenly throughout the story, unlike some other movies. Which means that we have a story with good characters, good plot, good setting, good animation, and good pacing. This is absolutely the better of the two shorts, but unlike Fun and Fancy Free, where one of the shorts was good and the other one sucked, both of these shorts are actually passable stories. Like, man, this is fantastic. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, that's the next one. It has very, very little to do with any legends. Sorry. And the legend is actually only introduced in the last 10 minutes or so that's something. Instead, this is the story of Ichabod Crane being an absolute legend on the level of Casey before meeting an untimely demise. Well, maybe. We'll get to that. For now, can we just appreciate Ichabod's design? I mentioned earlier that he had the best design in the movie, and that remains true now. Hey, do I even need to say anything? And the Headless Horseman's design is pretty good too. I mean, it was basically guaranteed to be good since he's literally a guy with no head, but still. Everyone else's designs are pretty average though. And then plot-wise, it's just really, really basic. Katrina, hottest woman in town. Her dad is rich and owns a big farm. Rich, pretty girl. Basic. And she's the annoying friend from that Frog Princess movie. And all the guys in the town basically do whatever for her because there's one guy who pretty much just claims her for himself. And he's basically Gaston. Brom Bones is his name, but if you look into it, Brom Bones was actually the inspiration for Gaston, so there's not really a difference. And then Ichabod eventually finds her and falls in love with her too, but over time she falls in love with him. And normally this wouldn't work, but this romance isn't like the other ones we've been seeing. So normally, like the guy falls in love with the girl because she's pretty, and then the girl falls in love with the guy because she has no other options. And the first part is still true here, but Katrina literally has a whole town full of options, and she still chooses Ichabod. So that gives this relationship a little bit of depth that most of them haven't had. But then Brom tells the story of the Headless Horseman to scare Ichabod, and then he dresses up as the Headless Horseman and kills Ichabod. Or at least that's how I interpret it. There's a lot of ways to interpret it. And then Brom marries Katrina, and none of them live happily ever after, because they're dead. I would call that subversive, but it's the ending to literally one of the most famous stories ever, so I don't think anybody's really subverted here. Just me, because I don't know the story, even though I've heard it a bunch of times. Anyway, the point is, story is good. Once again, good characters, good plot, good setting, good animation, and good pacing. That is 2 for 2. That is one more than Fun and Fancy Free. And that's also why this movie goes to the very top. I know, it's kind of shocking, but this is the first movie so far where I actually would have been willing to watch it a second time right after finishing it the first time. And considering I put off watching this movie for a while, that's pretty impressive. And just like that, the 1940s are done. Didn't even take too long. That was a lie, I'm exhausted. Now it's on to the 50s, also known as Disney's Silver Age. Interesting coincidence, that will also be the color of my hair by the time I finish. I'm gonna go play Skywalker Saga again. See you in 8 months.